Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another Social Blueprint interview where we are trying to bring you interesting people within the community that you may or may not know about, but that really have incredible journeys, incredible lessons, and if nothing else, can just make you feel more connected. And speaking of connected, we're normally in the Melbourne community and here at home. But the issue we're going to talk about today doesn't just affect Jewish people in Melbourne, or Jewish people in Sydney for that matter, but it affects everybody, Jewish, not Jewish, and globally. That's right, because we're going to talk about having children and sometimes the struggles that come along with that. And we are joined all the way from up north, from our perspective in Melbourne, in Sydney today with Kerry Gonski, because Kerry is truly making a difference in this space. She is the chairperson of the Australian Jewish Fertility Network, but really a lot more than that. And we're going to talk all about these challenges, making a difference in community, and also how you can use your professional history to help you throughout all of your endeavors. So with that, but before I turn it over to you, Kerry, just one last thing. I just want to say, here at the Social Blueprint, we're known for the videos, but we are so much more than that. We are a true resource. We have a calendar event, and if you need any help at all, we are here for you. And with that, Kerry, welcome.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here. And thank you for putting up with my potentially really bad internet connection, which anyone who has been dealing with me for the last few years has come to know and hopefully accept/love. So apologies if it goes blurry at any point during this interview.
Not a problem at all, Kerry. And after COVID, we can handle anything.
Excellent.
Hey, Kerry, couples, when they get married, most of them super excited for the next chapter of their lives, which is parenting. But sometimes it's easier said than done. What was the spot for you? And can you just talk a little bit about your journey where you said to yourself, this may be a little bit more difficult than we anticipated?
Yeah, sure. So, you're really starting at the heart of it.
Okay.
So I might go back one step, which is that I come from a gigantic family. Anyone who knows me would refer to our family as the Brady Bunch. I am the youngest of 7 children.
Wow.
Mum had 3. Her first husband passed away when she was very young. She was left as a widow of with 3 children under the age of 6. And my dad had 3 children previously from a previous marriage, and they met much later in life and got together and had me. So my whole life I grew up that was normal for me to sit around a table with 7 siblings, a lot of noise, a lot of fun, and family is really central to me and my whole life. And the other thing that was normal to me was having a mother who was pregnant with me at the age of 42. And naturally. So when it came to my husband and I getting married, we'd been honeymooners, we'd been newlyweds for a few years, we were loving life, we were just enjoying being the 2 of us and being adults with relatively no responsibilities, and we decided, okay, we're ready to start a family. And the journey didn't quite go according to plan. And for anyone who knows my husband or I, people would know or would describe us as high achieving, A-type personalities, very much with a plan, often trying to be in control. And here was a moment that we had no control over, despite how hard we tried, despite how hard we might, despite how hard we tried, it just wasn't working. We were fortunate to fall pregnant naturally within the first 12 months of trying, but unfortunately lost that baby. Had a late stage miscarriage and was totally unexpected and traumatic in itself. And after that event, our obstetrician at the time suggested, look, let's give it a few months after having had what's called a D&C, which is a procedure after having had a miscarriage, which basically clears you out and sets a blank slate and is the best possible chances of falling pregnant after that. And our obstetrician said, look, I'm not panicking yet. You guys are still relatively young. I was under 30 years old at the time. And he said, just go, keep trying. if for some reason within the next 3 months it hasn't happened, it'll be past a year of trying. That's technically when you're considered to have infertility, and I'd recommend you see a fertility specialist. And this was like a really daunting thing for someone to tell me who's coming out this like family is just what we do. Like,
Sure.
I've got a million nieces and nephews. They're just always children in our life. And I work in a children's charity at the time. I'm surrounded by children. And so we made this appointment with a fertility specialist a few months down the track, thinking, I'm going to cancel it. I'm not going to need that appointment, but they're so impossible to get into. I better make the appointment just in case. And we tried and we tried, and we just couldn't fall pregnant again. And it came up to that time in March, which was this far away appointment I thought I was never going to need. And we had to go there. And that then started what became a much more complicated journey than we were expecting.
Right.
And thank God, after multiple rounds of various fertility treatments, we were eventually blessed with our first little IVF miracle back in December 2016.
Beautiful. And I have to ask, we both ironically used the word roller coaster when we were describing the events. And you said, you touched on it, that there were multiple attempts. Getting into the mechanics of it, can you just tell people, and especially I am 100% sure that there are going to be people watching that are going through this right now. A, can you give some stats or view of like how fast does it work? And B, any tidbits about how to handle that?
Yeah. So I can give you the stats. I have lived and breathed this for the last decade.
Okay.
So when I talk about, you ask about my journey to becoming a parent, it started a decade ago.
Wow.
It started a decade ago when it was New Year's Eve and my husband and I decided, you know what, let's try and have a baby. I think this year's our year. That's when it started. Fast forward, what we went through, what ultimately took 3 years to make a baby, our first baby. I'll walk you through a little bit more around that. So these stats are not just my personal stats. It's from my knowledge of having worked within this industry now and been involved in it for the last decade. But I have to caveat that I am not a fertility specialist. I am not a medical professional,
Right.
and that nobody should take their medical advice from me.
Absolutely.
This is me as a human being who is passionate about this space and has my own personal experience in it. So if that can help one person out there, then I'm grateful for that. So in terms of the stats, so infertility affects 1 in 6 couples in Australia. And within the Jewish community, we have an even higher prevalence of requiring assisted reproductive technology. So not just IVF, but different types of fertility treatments. The reason why there's a higher incidence than just 1 in 6 couples within the Jewish community is because for a lot of Jewish couples, there is a need for fertility treatment or fertility intervention due to genetic factors. So rather than there being a higher incidence of infertility, it's that there are a number of genetic mutations that are being passed down through Jewish people marrying Jewish people and following sort of the lines down, that a lot of couples are forced into having fertility treatment to try and avoid these life-threatening genetic conditions being passed through their genes.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why places like the Australian Jewish Fertility Network have such an important place to play and a role to play within our Jewish community, as well as the community at large. In terms of some other stats, I think, age is the biggest factor that comes into it when you're talking about fertility. You ask any medical professional and they will say, look, the younger you are, the better you are as the woman. And the reason for that is because as a woman, we are born, literally the day we are born, while we're still in our mother's uterus, our eggs, every single egg we will ever have for the rest of our life is already being created. The day we are born, we have all our eggs. And then from that day on, they start to deplete. And when a woman sort of reaches puberty and starts to have their menstrual cycle, they lose one, maybe more eggs every single month. And that's the reason why age is such a factor, because as you can imagine, the number of eggs going down and the quality of those eggs depleting over time has an effect on fertility and has an effect on the potential success rate.
Hey, Kerry, there's a big difference, though, between those statistics of understanding the process versus emotionally living it. Can you just talk to us about that a little bit and about words of advice?
Absolutely. I might just first address the elephant in the room in case anyone is paying close attention to the entire background that has now changed. I'm not in the garden. I am now at my neighbor's house, who has kindly allowed me to use her internet. And I think that this is actually a part of the advice I would give in terms of managing the emotional roller coaster that is fertility treatment. And it is out of your control. You need to remain cautiously optimistic, and you need to allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to actually open yourself up to relying on your village, because you alone may be the person who is physically experiencing the treatment, but there is an entire support system waiting to help you, and they are there to be there for you, and they want to be there for you. And it's so important to not go through this alone. In terms of the actual managing emotions, something that I found incredibly helpful was actually seeking out the professional support. So our fertility clinic offered professional fertility counselors that both my husband and I could speak to as a couple and individually, and that professional emotional support was really important for us. We chose to be open about our journey whilst we were on it, only because when we were dealt the infertility card by our doctor, when we experienced a miscarriage, we felt like we were the only ones to ever have gone through it. We saw all our friends around us already having had kids. We were the last ones there, and we had no idea that some of them had also experienced a miscarriage along their journey. We had no idea that some of those beautiful little children that we were looking at with such envious eyes were also IVF miracles, and no one had spoken about it. And so we chose to be quite open with our journey, one, so that anyone within our life understood where we were at right then and there. And that made it easier for other people, not just to support us, but to have a better understanding when asking how we were, or checking in, or even just inviting us to things, having an idea of what might be sensitive at that moment. But also so that we wanted to be open about it so that anyone around us who was going through it didn't ever feel alone the way that we felt alone.
Right. And Kerry, obviously you're a person of action. You've taken it a step further. You've created, or you're the chairperson of the AJFN, again, the Australian Jewish Fertility Network. That's a lot to say, though, at one given time. Just talk to us about it. What is that support that you say? It sounds like you never want somebody to laugh together and cry alone, so to speak. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, so just to be clear, I did not create the AJFN.
Okay.
A beautiful, beautiful human by the name of Shterni Dadon was the founder of the AJFN. And she did that from the goodness of her heart back in December 2006, because she heard of one couple in her community that was about to give up on their dream of becoming parents because they couldn't afford another round of IVF. And she could not bear to think that a couple was going to give up on their dream of becoming parents because they couldn't afford to do so. And she went out into her community to raise some funds to pay for this couple's treatment, which ended up actually being their baby finally. And that also led to the birth of the AJFN, which Shterni did not intend to start an organization when she was doing that for this one couple. And you fast forward now to 2023, this organization is now fully fledged and has an entire beautiful support team behind it of volunteers and a board and professional staff.
Kerry, the AJFN, can you just go into a little bit more detail? What is it?
So the AJFN is the Australian Jewish Fertility Network, and we have a vision that no Jewish Australian ever feels alone on their fertility journey. We believe that everybody deserves the opportunity to try to create the next generation. And I have the enormous privilege of being the chair of the board of directors for this beautiful organization. But I am standing on the shoulders of giants, and in particular, the giants that I always have in mind and that the whole organization always has in mind is the founder of the AJFN, the person who had the vision to actually create this organization in the first place, and that is Shterni Dadon. And thanks to her vision, this organization now exists to be able to provide emotional, financial, educational, advocacy, and spiritual support for any Jewish Australian experiencing a difficult fertility journey. In terms of my involvement, or in your question around taking action, so there's two parts to this.
Okay.
One was sitting in shul on Rosh Hashanah 2016, and I was very pregnant with my now beautiful first IVF miracle. And the rabbi, which was Rabbi Wolf at Central Synagogue in Sydney, was speaking about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That was his topic of his drosha that day.
Okay.
And one of the extraordinary things that an ordinary person had done, he revealed that there was a couple in shul that day that was paying for the fertility treatment of another couple sitting in shul that day, and that neither couple knew each other. And the couple that had had their fertility treatment funded by the other couple had just found out that they were pregnant. And he spoke about this incredible mitzvah that this couple was doing for another couple, extraordinary, being done by ordinary people. And he didn't make any mention of an organization. It wasn't actually through the AJFN, but I was sitting there like heavily pregnant with my little IVF miracle. And I looked down at my husband and I just said to him, like, we've got to do something like this. Like, we have to pay this forward.
Right.
And we came out of shul that day and we spoke about it, and we had just gotten involved in a giving circle called the Giving Tree. And we were, each of the families as part of the Giving Circle was asked to come with some ideas for some grassroots charities that we could look to support in our first year. And we sat out the front of the first meeting, literally we both like rushed there from work, Googling what charities exist in the fertility space, like what could we put forward, because we really want to do something in the fertility space. This is our spot.
Right.
And we came across this beautiful little organization called the AJFN. We'd never heard of it. Now, we'd been going on this journey of fertility for 3 years at this point as a Jewish couple in Australia. And those stars aligned, and we put forward the AJFN for a charity to be chosen by the Giving Circle, and they were. And part of our ethos in our philanthropic giving is that we don't just give the donation itself, but we want to give our time and our talents in order to help amplify that impact. And so we met the beautiful Shterni, the founder of AJFN, and said, here is a donation from the group, and how can we help you with our skills and our time? And I was about to go on maternity leave for 12 months with my first, and working in the for-purpose sector as a professional in fundraising and marketing. I said to Shterni, you've got me for 12 months. I'm not working for the next 12 months. Use me how you can. And we then went on to develop the first business plan, created an advisory committee, started to create a bit of a roadmap for the charity, which at that point it was 10 years old as a charity, and it didn't have a business plan or any sort of strategic plan in place. And Shterni had great vision and just needed some help and needed some team around her, and that's what I said. You've got me. I'm here to help. Let's form the plan. Let's form the team. And we created the advisory committee, created the business plan. One of the key things was getting the charity registered as a not-for-profit with DGR status in its own right.
Right.
Forming a board of directors. I helped to form that board, not intending to sit on the board. And I actually was in the hospital having just given birth to my second IVF little miracle. And Sterling came to visit me in the hospital to say Mazel Tov and bring a little gift from the team. And she said, oh, you know that board that you formed and there's such great people on it. They've asked if perhaps you would join the board. And I was like, I'm literally here with a brand new hands. Are you sure about this, Stern? She said, no, they really want you to join. And I agreed, fine, okay. And she said, oh, and also they'd like you to chair it. I feel like for me, this is an opportunity to turn all those years of pain into purpose.
Right.
How can I say no to this? This is what I was put on this earth to do. I feel like all the roads have led to this.
Wow, that's unbelievable story. And I can ask you 50 questions right now, but I'm just going to start out with one, which is, a lot of people, when they're giving money to charities, their biggest pushback is, I have no idea where their money is going. I don't see the impact. I just have nothing it's just out of my pocket, so to speak. It sounds like, judging from your story about on Rosh Hashanah, this is the complete opposite. Like, you see the impact. Do you feel that as well?
Absolutely. I think that in terms of seeing the impact, there is nothing greater than actually seeing a new little life, a new Jewish neshama that is now on this planet because of something that someone else has done. That there is nothing greater than that. But in terms of how we would measure the impact of the AJFN, yes, it's beautiful to see the miracles. It's beautiful to count those babies. And we've now had 43 AJFN babies born since the start of the organization.
Amazing.
But what is far greater in impact and what we really pride ourselves in is measuring the number of Jewish Australians that feel less alone on their journey because of the AJFN. Because a journey is not straightforward. It is not A to B. It's not guaranteed. And that's what we're here for, is actually to make sure that no Jewish Australian ever feels alone on that journey. So that's the sort of impact when we're talking about measuring. It's how many, we've got trained peer companion volunteers that are people who have walked, similar to myself, have walked a fertility journey of their own. They've been trained by a professional psychologist, professional counselor in the space to be a peer, to be a companion for somebody who is currently going through that journey. And the number of companion and peer pairings that we have, that's impact. Someone who's going to be there to hold that person's hand through every step of that journey, wherever that journey leads them. The Shabbat meals that we deliver to someone who's they've had some rough news that week. Their egg collection, their embryo transfer didn't work. They've had a miscarriage. Like that's care, that's impact.
Right.
It's the educational webinars that we're able to hold that we've had over 450 people attending to learn and arm themselves with knowledge about the fertility sector that enables them to feel less alone and more in control of their own journey. That's impact. So it's beautiful to see those miracle babies at the end, but that's not actually all the impact that we're having.
Yes, and people who are watching, you are never, ever alone. It may feel that way, but it's not true, is it, Kerry?
Absolutely not. And I would encourage anyone who's watching this, whether it is you yourself who's going through a challenging fertility journey, or it's someone that you know, someone that you care about, reach out to the AJFN. We are here to help each and every Jewish Australian, and it is completely confidential. When you do reach out, I'm sure Greg will put this on the screen because he's incredible at this. Here are the contact details, but it's via email, via text message, or via phone, and it's completely confidential. And we're waiting and ready to help you, whether that is financial support, emotional support, educational support, or just pure advocacy. And spiritual support. Sorry, this is the fifth one. So guiding people who need that spiritual support or navigating the halakha when it comes to fertility. That's something that we specialize in as well.
Great. And speaking of halakha, this is a Jewish organization. Maybe just talk about a little bit what is coming up in the next, I believe it's about 10 days from now from when we're filming. It's a special Shabbat. They're all special, but this one's a special one.
It is a very special one. So we are taking part in the 8th Global Infertility Awareness Shabbat. There are a number of the Jewish fertility organizations that exist around the world that are all taking part in this. It started out of the USA by an organization called Yesh Tikva, and AJFN is proudly championing this in Australia. So the focus of the Shabbat is, as the name suggests, to raise awareness. It's to open the conversation around infertility. There are a number of activities happening in both Sydney and in Melbourne, where the rabbis are leading sermons focused on infertility. They are having special guest speakers from the community come and speak within their synagogues. For example, there is something on at the Ark Centre on Friday night. There's a Kiddush and a service that will follow with a guest speaker. Rabbi Mendy at South Caulfield Shul have got Cindy Cree as a guest speaker. Rabbi Rabin at Caulfield Shul and Rabbi Glasson at St Kilda Shul will also be talking about infertility in their sermons. So there's a lot happening in Melbourne. And for anyone in Sydney, we are having in addition to what's happening in a number of the synagogues, we're actually doing a special communal challah bake on Thursday night, the 23rd of March. So we are going to be under the stars at Central Synagogue with about 150 beautiful humans who are coming to bake challah and let their prayers and their bread rise at the same time in honor of those who are struggling to have children. And may they only be blessed.
Yes. Absolutely. Hey, Kerry, you have so many resources available to people. I want to take a little turn for a second here to resources about you professionally. You started your career, I believe, at Unilever. Is that correct?
Yep.
And you learned quite a bit about sales and marketing. What I'd love to hear A, about it, and B, I always think that there's a negative stigma around sales, but like anything that we're taught in the Torah, you can use anything for the good or the bad. Can you just talk about a little bit of professionally how it's helped you in everything that you do now?
Yeah, it's the best training ground I ever had was as part of the Unilever graduate program.
Wow.
It really taught me everything I know about sales, marketing, brand activation, campaigns, really that whole kind of 360 degree of activating a brand, activating a campaign, bringing people on a journey. And I was sort of almost 7 years into that journey at Unilever in both sales and marketing. I'd sold Streets ice cream, Lipton iced tea, skincare, hair care, like you name it. Any household item, I probably sold it. And I loved it. And I had some of my best times there and still have really dear friends from that industry that I'm still in touch with. But for me, I got to a point where I felt like I had been put on this earth to do something and use those skills to make a difference, to make a bigger difference, and to help those less fortunate. And so for me, I chose to pivot into the for-purpose sector and work within it. In the children's health space. So that's my sort of professional area. And in terms of the skill, like the translation, yeah. Sales and fundraising, it's the same thing. Marketing and brand activation or a campaign, same thing. I used to manage the national account for Woolworths from Unilever, so a national customer manager and a corporate partnerships manager in the for-purpose sector, same thing. It's the same skills, and it really just teaches you how to communicate well, how to really get behind the emotional connection that someone would have to a product or to a brand, or the cause. And it's about finding that kind of shared value and that shared connection and communicating it. One of the best things that being taught as a professional salesperson is being taught the value of always asking.
Right.
Don't be afraid to ask. The worst that's going to happen is someone's going to say no.
Right.
And when you are asking as a fundraiser, you're not asking for someone to buy something off you. You have no personal gain in this situation.
None.
Like, you're not going to get a bonus because you sold them an extra pack of Magnum ice cream that week. You know, like it's completely coming from an altruistic place. And the best part about utilizing your sales skills in the fundraising space is that you are asking on behalf of someone that doesn't have the ability to ask. You are in a position where you can talk to someone who has the ability to make a difference in somebody's life. And the person whose life they're going to make a difference in will never have the opportunity or would never feel comfortable to ask that person to help them directly. So what a beautiful opportunity you have as a fundraiser.
Yeah, Kerry, it's amazing. And I can't help but think, and I guess we have to keep it somewhat short. Your entire journey from your professional career to what you're doing now, you are obviously Jewish. For our audience, do you feel like to some degree there is a higher purpose and it is a calling, if you will?
Ooh, that's a big one. That's a big question. Yes, I do believe there's a higher purpose. I think when you go through challenges, and I'm going to reflect back on one of your earlier questions, which was around that emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
When you are in moments of life that are seriously challenging, firstly, they are sometimes what gives you the perspective to appreciate the highs.
Yeah.
Not that I for one second wish upon anyone to have some of the lows that I've experienced, but I am grateful for each and every one of those experiences because they are what makes me the most grateful to look at what I have and be grateful for what I have right now. Do I think there's a higher purpose? Absolutely. I think your free will and your own, as a human, your choice, that has a role to play. It's not, I don't believe it's all just planned out for you and you can just kind of go with the flow. I think you need to make concerted effort and choices, and each of us are free to do that. But I do think there's a greater purpose. And for me, I believe that the pain that I have experienced is what led to what now is the greatest purpose of my life, which is, not just being a wife and a daughter and a sister, but being a mother.
Right.
And then having the privilege to be the chair of the AJFN. If you would have asked me this 20 years ago when I started my career at Unilever, do you think you'll ever be the chair of the Australian Jewish Fertility Network? I would have been like, why would I be doing that? I'm selling street ice cream. So yes, I do believe there's a higher purpose. And from a Jewish perspective, one of the greatest mitzvahs in this world is, to save a life, but what about to create one?
Yeah.
So
incredible. Kerry, I think we'll call it a day there. Incredible story. And for everybody, again, we can't stress it enough. If you're going through this situation, you're not alone. There are tons of resources out there for you and people want to help you.
Absolutely.
Kerry, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Greg. And thanks
Bye-bye.
for bearing with my internet.
Of course. Bye-bye.